Hey, I'm Lauren and welcome to my first video on Lotus Phi 2, my new workstation build. Now for those of you that are new to the channel or just need a reminder, I have Lotus Phi 1, my X99 i7-6900K GTX 970 workstation PC, Orchid, my X470 Ryzen 7 1700 and RTX 2080 Ti gaming PC, and then finally our Nebula, my Z87 i7 4770K 20TB file server. I also have Wolfsbane, my new 56TB NAS, but that's not a build, so I guess it's not really a part of my trinity of personal PCs, so just ignore that one. But yeah, so Lotus Phi 1 has some really old parts, like the power supply is 8 years old, the case is 5 years old, and the core hardware has begun to feel a bit sluggish, especially given that I film and edit in 4K. So an upgrade is long overdue, especially for someone who runs a PC hardware YouTube channel. So I'm very eager to just get started. So therefore, let me introduce the case I've chosen to you. So for this build, I was looking for a case that was quite sleek and minimalistic, and yet one that had something a little different about it. And I stumbled upon the Cooler Master SL600M, and right from when I first saw it, I just knew it was the case for this build. Because it is very sleek and minimalistic, whilst also having a futuristic sci-fi touch to it that I really like. I also like its mix of anodised aluminium and tempered glass. Now I'm sure that what you've noticed about this case is what appears to be the most restrictive front air intake design ever, but this case actually uses a vertical chimney design. All the air intakes from the bottom of the case and out of the roof. This leads to some interesting design decisions, like the very high feet to maximise airflow under the case, and a completely blocked off rear fan placement. But I have to say that, at least on paper, I really like the very controlled airflow design of this case. It seems very efficient. And in the past, I've actually taped off vents and gaps around builds to have better control of the airflow direction in them. So this very controlled airflow design is very appealing to me. So the case comes with two 200mm fans in the floor, and there's also space for 2 more on the roof. Although of course you can use 120 or 140mm fans instead, and if water cooling you could fit up to a 280 or 360mm radiator in either the top or bottom of the case. I am not going to be water cooling this build though. I am making full use of the 4 200mm fan mounts. The 200mm fans that I'm going to be using? Noctua NF A20 PWM fans. It's going to look so cool to have 4 200mm Noctua fans in this build. And these fans really are so giant, like the size of the boxes they come in make me think of pizza boxes. There is one potentially major issue with these fans though. According to Noctua's website, they're not compatible with my case. Now hopefully this is just a screw hole placement issue, which is common with 200mm fans, as they don't yet have a universal sizing standard like smaller fans have. But let's find out. So the first step towards finding out is to dismantle the case, by firstly taking off this plate here, which allows you to mount two 2.5-inch SSDs to it if you want to. But I'm not going to, as I'm planning on going with M.2 SSDs instead. Although I do plan to keep this plate in the finished build, as I think it will look much cleaner that way. So next I have to remove this bottom fan grille. Now there is a chance that I won't be able to fit this back in once the Noctua fans are installed, as they're 30mm thick versus the 25mm stock fans that come with the case. The SL600M has a dust filter that covers the entire bottom intake of the case, and it folds in the middle to make it easier to remove in tight spaces, which is nice. So now I can remove these 2 stock 200mm fans. I should say that there's probably nothing wrong with these fans, it's just that I've got my heart set on having this giant Noctua wind tunnel. Plus, I actually think the Noctua colour adds a professional touch, which will set the build apart from my more flashy RGB gaming PC. So from this angle, the Noctua NF A20 seem to fit just fine. But looking at them from inside of the case, I think I can see the reason why Noctua probably say these aren't compatible with this case, as they fit so closely together that it's actually not possible to get both fans to sit completely flat. But they're both in and the blades spin. So now it's time to work out if I get to keep the grille or not. I would like to, because it will make cable management a little easier as it blocks off the rear of the case. And thankfully it does indeed fit, and the fans can still spin. So 2 down, 2 still to go. So for the fans in the roof, firstly the roof panel is removed by undoing a single thumb screw and then 6 little plastic clips. Then there's the fan grille panel, which has the 120 and 140mm fan mounts, but I won't be needing this. So as there's not enough clearance for these fans to go on the inside of the case, on top is my only option, and I've managed to get 2 screws to line up with the holes in the case for each fan. Although I've had to use radiator screws, as the screws included with the case aren't long enough to fit through these thicker fans. I could drill 4 holes into the frame to secure these fans down properly, but honestly I don't think it's necessary, as these are heavy fans with rubber corners, plus gravity is in my favour, so I'm really confident they aren't going anywhere. So now for the moment of truth, will the roof panel fit? No. No, it won't. Sadly, there's a pretty large gap around the entire case where the fans are just too thick. Bringing the camera in for a closer look, hopefully you can see the problem. The plastic frame that holds this grille together is touching the fan frames in several places. Taking a closer look at the frame, you can see that Cooler Master have made little notches to allow for their 200mm fans, but these aren't sufficient to allow for the thicker Noctua fans. Trying to sit a Noctua 200mm fan into the panel shows the extent of the problem, and I'm not entirely sure if it'd be possible to make this work. So I decided to make a little template so that I could visualise if the fan could fit and how much plastic would have to go. And yay, I can get this to sit low enough into the panel that I'm confident enough that this is worth giving a go. So time to get the Dremel out. But first, I want to see if I can dismantle this panel so that I don't have to worry about damaging the grille. And thankfully, Cooler Master have opted to use a glueless approach. So it's just a few screws and some metal tabs to take everything apart. So I've never actually modded a case before, and this is my first time using this Dremel in a video, so please go easy on me in regards to my technique, etc. So I'm using a metal cutting blade because I didn't have any plastic ones, and I'm running the Dremel on a slow speed because I know that plastic has a tendency to melt instead of cut. This was a really slow process, taking me well over an hour. I basically ended up essentially sanding it with a cutting disc as it was too difficult to get constant clean cuts with a blade this large on something this small. I should have just switched to an actual sanding bit straight away, but when I later did switch to one, it was much easier. I kept testing at regular intervals to see if I'd taken enough plastic off, and when the fans looked like they would fit comfortably, I switched to cleaning things up a bit manually with a nail file. So the moment of truth. Can I get it to fit over the fans? Yes I can. But there's a lot of flex in this frame, which won't be there once the grille and aluminium parts are added back on. So after putting the panel back together, I gave fitting it another go, and I went on, I did it. Which means that my SL600M officially has 4 200mm Noctua NFA20 fans installed. However, I really should plug them in just to, check that they spin okay and that there's not any strange vibrations or anything. Which means that I need a power supply. And the power supply that I'm using for this build is the Cooler Master V1000 Platinum. Now, I know that I'm going to get a ton of comments on the finished build about how 1000 watts is completely overkill, but I wanted to give myself plenty of room for future upgrades, because I never know what direction the future iterations of Lotus will take. So this is an 80 plus platinum rated, fully modular power supply with a low noise fan. With the SL600M, you have this vertical power supply mount and a second section for hiding your cables, and you can choose the placement of these two parts. I want to set this up to maximise the amount of space that I have for cable management, so I'm thinking of putting the top part as high as possible and the bottom part as low as possible and seeing how that looks. And yeah, I think that looks good, especially as the SSD cover plate will hide the power supply sticker. I have to say though that I do think the power supply airflow section of this case does let down the really efficient airflow design of the case overall, with the power supply intaking air from within the front panel. However, there is a fair amount of room here for air to make its way from the bottom fan area and up and out of the case. But as you can see, I did go a little crazy with cable management off camera, because for some reason I thought that it was a good idea to go with power supply extensions instead of full replacement cables in this field. So I've just gone and got as much of the stock cables tied up in here as possible, to give me as much cable hiding room as possible as I continue the build. So for now, I'm just going to short the 24-pin cable, run a SATA power cable to the inbuilt fan controller, and then plug the 4 Noctua fans into the fan controller's 4 PWM headers. So this gives me a low, medium and high fan speed setting directly on my front I/O. And I have to say, this case has the coolest front I/O of any case I've ever used, with a proximity sensor that lights up the USB ports. So I have it powered up and everything works as expected. And okay, I know that this isn't exactly like the most ambitious mod ever, and I probably have no right to be as proud as I am over it, and everyone's going to be like, Lauren, you sanded a bit of plastic, what do you want, a medal? But yes, okay, yes I do, because my SL600M is basically a Noctua wind tunnel. Like, how cool is that? With 2 giant fans intaking the bottom and 2 giant fans exhausting out the roof. Like, it is just so cool. And I do think that this has the potential to be one of the quietest systems I've ever built. But we'll have to wait for the other components to be installed and for some heat to be generated before I can really know how well this build performs thermally. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this little adventure and the first part of my workstation build. If you did, please hit the like button. In the next video, I'll be diving straight into the core components. So if you want to see that and haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe, or perhaps consider becoming a patron. And thank you for watching.